Welcome everyone to a new episode of Post-PhD Directions, where we explore exciting career paths for PhDs beyond academia. And today we're diving into Pharma R&D, a field where PhDs can apply their scientific expertise in industry settings. And our guest is Dr. Andrea Grandi. He is a R&D scientist at Chiesi Group with a PhD in pharmacology and a background as a pharmacist. After completing a postdoc, Andreas successfully transitioned into the pharmaceutical industry. One needs to mention in Italy, which is a really competitive field. And now he helps PhDs and postdocs navigate their own career transition into R&D in pharma. And in this episode, Andrea will break down what working in R&D in pharma actually looks like, what skills PhDs and postdocs need to succeed, and how they can actually make the leap from academia into a role in R&D. So whether you're considering a career in R&D or just curious about your options, this episode is definitely packed with a lot of actionable insights to help you move forward in your next career step. And with this, welcome, Andrea.
Thank you. Thank you for the kind introduction, Lina. I'm very excited to be here in your podcast, and thank you very much for having me.
Really excited to have you. And Andrea, I just would like to set the stage with the first question. Would you like to give us a short intro to R&D in pharma? What does it actually involve? What are the different types of R&D in pharma? And what sort of roles are out there within R&D in pharma?
Yeah, thanks, Lina. I think that's a very, very relevant question for the audience and for all the PhDs and postdocs listening there. So actually, R&D, I bring my experience in Chiesi, but in general, kind of R&D tend to be somewhat similar across different companies. So R&D entails everything in the research and development of a new drug, basically from scratch up to the launch, then the market authorization from regulatory agencies, and also the monitoring of the life cycle of the product. So there are basically different areas in preclinical in R&D, which encompasses preclinical, clinical, chemistry, manufacturing controls, and regulatory affairs. So my experience has been in preclinical over the last 5 years in Chiesi, and this is what I can share more details of. However, it's not limited to that. There's really a wide range of other roles. There's pharmacovigilance, there's toxicology. There's a lot of different disciplines and a lot of different departments and people with different backgrounds that work all together towards a common goal, which might be bringing a new drug through clinical trials or bringing a new drug to a launch in the market.
Thank you. So if you would so how did you actually come to be interested in this field? I mean, I see you do have a background in pharmacology, so I guess you were already maybe drawn towards that direction. How did you make the transition from academia after your postdoc into industry?
So definitely I was a pharmacologist, PhD in pharmacology, postdoc in pharmacology. So it felt kind of the natural path when I wanted to move into industry. The main reason why is I wanted to see the application of my work. I wanted to see an impact on real world, an impact on patients. So it felt just like the natural move. But when I wanted to transition from a postdoc to Pharma R&D 6 years ago, I found out that the transition process was way harder than I expected. It took me actually 2 years from my first job application to landing the first role. And my first industry role was in a totally different field. So now I realize that what I was doing during my postdoc in my job search, I was highly limiting my opportunity. I was thinking like, I'm a pharmacologist, so I did a PhD, postdoc, I have a very solid academic background. I want to move to industry because I want to make a career and I want to have an impact on patients. So I would like to land a pharmacology scientist role. And this is the same things that I see every day with the PhDs that I mentor. So many of my mentees are in the same situation. They say like, I am a biochemist and I want to transition into industry as a senior scientist in biochemistry. And unfortunately, it doesn't work that way. Very often, more often than not, it doesn't work that way. So the thing is, from my experience, only a very small fraction of PhDs actually land a first industry role which is completely aligned with their academic background. It's just a small percentage. And in fact, the thing that I suggest to my mentees is to gain awareness of the different roles available in pharma industry and pharma industry R&D, if R&D is what they want to do. Be open to the wide range of roles that are available out there and also explore opportunities beyond their initial background. So does that mean that we have to give up our dream of being a scientist on our discipline after so many years of effort and so much hard work? No. No, but here is the thing. The thing that industry values the most, and it took me a lot to realize this, is industry experience. So this is why we struggle landing the first job, because we lack the industry experience. And it was so frustrating back then, 6 years ago. How am I supposed to have this experience? And so what I suggest is that your first industry role is the best way, is the way to get your first foot in the door. And it's so critical, it's the most critical step. So once you've done that, even if it's not a role which is completely aligned with your academic background, even if it's not the protein that you've studied so much, even if it's not in that pathway, in that disease area, just take the opportunity. It doesn't have to be forever. It's just your first role in industry. From my experience, it becomes easier to switch roles once you have gained that experience. And it was for me. So in 2020, I switched from my first role in biotech, in manufacturing, to an R&D role in pharma, in a pharmacology position, which is what was much more in line with my background and with my career goals. So my suggestions to the postdocs is you should keep focus on your goals, your career goals and ambitions, but at the same time, being flexible on the path to get there.
This was packed with so many valuable insights. I actually want to talk about all of them. First of all, what you say, I think, is so valuable, and we really see that too with our work at Alma Me. Sometimes PhDs come in with this very narrow focus on where they want to work, and this is all they apply for, but you really narrow your chances to get in at all because you don't have a lot of jobs available to you. And at the end of the day, is really the first job, as you said, it doesn't have to be necessarily your dream job, but the important thing is to get a foot in because, as you said, industry values industry experience. I always remember, and I can quickly tell this anecdote from a friend of mine. He was a data scientist and he really wanted to be a data scientist in industry. So he didn't make it really. No one had any interest in him whatsoever. So he did an MBA because he thought, oh, MBA maybe makes me more valuable. But really what he got is a network through the MBA, and he got an internship. And through this internship, he got into a big consultancy firm as a data scientist. And believe it or not, no one cared about him before. And all of a sudden, recruiters would come through his LinkedIn trying to headhunt him. So you just see how the perception changes once you have this foot in there. So as you said, I think it's a really valuable tip. Know where you want to go, but be open and flexible to get there through detours. You know, it's not always maybe exactly the way you imagine and wish it. And I think in general, R&D scientist is a very competitive role to apply for. So get a foot in through something that is less competitive, become a known entity and move around. So that was also a very, very long kind of like reply to your answer, but it was really so many insights that I just wanted to complement with what we experience at Alma Me. So, and I think you also said a very valuable thing. So how do you go about the question? Because I get it a lot, Andrea, that they all want industry experience. I don't have any. So how do you get it? How did you solve this challenge for yourself? I see you went for a role in manufacturing. Maybe it wasn't your dream role, but was it easier to get in, or what was your strategy there?
So I can totally relate to what you said. The path of your friend is very similar to mine. And I actually posted about this last week on LinkedIn, and the post had a very significant engagement. So during my second year of postdoc, I was a little bit frustrated my job applications were going. So I enrolled to executive masters on pharma marketing and management, in which classes were held by industry professionals over weekends. So I was working in the lab as a postdoc Monday to Friday and going to another city to attend the classes in presence Saturday and Sunday. It was hard, but it helped a lot because the industry professionals who were holding the classes were sharing very valuable insights about the different roles in pharma industry. But most importantly, the network with other fellow attendees helped a lot. And this was actually through one of the fellow attendees that was crucial for landing my first role in biotech 1 year later, because she was already working in a small, but very innovative and fast-growing biotech company in Milan, and they just built a new site outside Milan, and they were hiring a lot of people to go work in the new site. And she just told me, okay, we have these opportunities in our company. You can work in a lab. You're a scientist. Would you like to join? And this is how I had the opportunity to land the first interview. Then you have to go through the selection process, which is very hard, but still, networking is a great way, and it helps a lot to go to the interview phase. Then start the selection process. The interview process is very challenging. It has many tips and tricks that you learn along the way, but networking helps you at least to get through the first phase of the, I call it high throughput screening that they do to select a bunch of candidates from hundreds of applications to go to the interview process.
I love what you said, and I also said before, I need to stop saying I love what you said, but I say that a lot in the podcast, but I just always love what my guests say, because it's so amazing how you came back to a topic that every podcast episode somehow gets to talk about, and it's the networking. Really, networking, because at the end of the day, this is for many people I talk to, their first way into industry. And so it was for you. And I think what's important to recognize is not only networking upwards, right? Network on the same level.
Yeah.
People who, you do a PhD
Absolutely.
with many people, you do a postdoc, right? It's like these people move into industry. So also maintain this already existing network. And look, maybe I did a PhD with these people. Where are they? They were my friends back in the days. And just leverage this network too. So, and this also really just shows networking. I always encourage people, go on LinkedIn, put yourself out there. You can meet people like Andrea. You can meet other professionals that create content, engage with their content, make yourself seen. I always say, if someone comments constantly on my posts, Andrea, when they drop me a DM and ask me if I want to have a chat, now I know you. Yes, I will take the time. But if you're an unknown, I cannot chat with everyone. And I think this is something, it's just the way networking works. So thank you so much for bringing this up and just emphasizing the importance of it. So Andrea, if we now think about moving into a role in R&D, how could one expect I don't want to say a typical day, but what are the tasks generally in R&D? What are the skills one can bring from a PhD that are really valued in these positions?
Right. So I'm very glad you didn't ask the typical daily work, because it's really very, very hard to find a proper answer to that, at least from my experience, because luckily there is not really any typical day. Every day is very different, and it all depends on the different periods of the year. Work is different, but roughly we can say that basically working into R&D in pharma, at least from my experience, it means doing lab work, doing presentations, doing meetings, and writing. So if I had to narrow down to 4 things, I would say this. And I would say lab work, meetings, preparing presentations, and writing on a 30-30, 20-20% basis. And of course, when you step in at the beginning, it's a lot of lab work. The more you advance, and the more critical it becomes to master the communication side of things. So be able to present your data effectively and be able to master communication with different kind of people from different backgrounds. Because this is the main difference, in my opinion, between being a scientist in academia and being a scientist in industry, is the diversity of the backgrounds and the people you interact on a daily basis. When we are in academia, we interact mostly with other scientists. They might be scientists from other disciplines. If you're a pharmacologist, you might have to interact daily with a medicinal chemist. But they're still scientists. In industry, is often not. Industry works through large R&D projects that involve really a lot of people. There are scientists from all disciplines, but there's also people who are not scientists. There is people from intellectual property. There's people from marketing. There's people from regulatory. And one trend that I noticed recently in my personal experience is that R&D projects tend to be more interdisciplinary than they used to, as some functions like regulatory or marketing, who traditionally played a role into the later stages of drug development, are now generally more involved even from the early stages of discovery. And also, some of the top managers or executives you have to report to from time to time, like every quarter or twice a year for the advancement of the projects, they not necessarily have a scientific background, yet their endorsement is critical for the project to advance. So you have to be able to communicate science effectively and try to find a match between the scientific and the strategic point of view, and with an effective communication. That's the biggest difference I see from being a scientist in academia and being a science in industry.
I love the communication part because I really truly believe one of the most important skills is communication.
Yeah.
If you manage communication, whether in private life or in professional life, you can actually succeed. It's all about selling ideas, persuading people, communicating facts, right? So, and you need to do it in a way that the other side, your audience, who is not always necessarily a scientist, and even if you're a scientist, you're different types of scientists, you still need to speak a different language. Learn this, and this is something I would hope to see more in PhD programs, that we focus more on how to communicate in a layman language complex findings. But I would also like to mention at this point, and I hope people don't get sick of it, LinkedIn is a great platform to start practicing talking layman language. Talk about your science, share your science, try to simplify it. I think is great to write, because sitting down, thinking things through, how do I communicate this, who is on the other side, it teaches you so much, and you become a better writer, you become a better communicator. So excellent point. Thank you for mentioning it. So Andrea, if now I have done a PhD and I'm thinking which skills are actually useful when I want to move into R&D, which skills are really something we have fostered during a PhD that I can bring directly into a role in R&D. I think you already mentioned it a little bit, but I just want to kind of make it a bit more clear. What are really the things that are important when you move into R&D role in terms of skills?
So this is a very, very interesting question. One of the questions that I asked most frequently, and I'm going to publish soon on LinkedIn a list of 6 frequently asked questions that PhDs ask to me, and this one is one of that. Is there one particular skill or some particular skill I should focus on to make myself more attractive for pharma R&D? So it's a tricky one, and I'm sure that if you ask to 6 different people this question, you'll likely get 6 different answers. So it's kind of personal. But generally speaking, I would say there are some skills PhDs generally already have. The tricky part is be able to translate it into industry relevant expertise. So many of them get lost in translation, one transitioning from academia to industry. For example, many postdocs, when they talk about themselves or their work, they just focus on the kind of disease or the targets that they have studied, the assays and the models they've experienced with. They make this long list of publications in the resume, this long list of academic achievements and conference presentations and awards. Industry is not really focused on that. It's more focused on other things that you have probably done during your PhD, like managing multiple projects, meeting tight deadlines, or handling the relationship with your PI, or mentoring or supervising, coordinating PhD students, undergraduate students, technicians, aka people. You have managed people. All of us during the PhD, or at least from my experience, have a bunch of students and maybe one technician to coordinate. That's managing people. We have deadlines, we have papers, we have seminars, we have conferences, abstracts, a lot of things to do. We meet tight deadlines. We manage projects effectively, multiple projects simultaneously often. These are very valuable skills for industry, and these are things that usually PhD do, but they tend to not be so effective in communicating these skills. So this is one part. The other part is, and I think this is the one in which probably PhDs usually might not be so prepared from their academic training, is the soft skills side of things, which is absolutely crucial. And I think here is some of the gaps between academia and industry. When we talk about ourselves or our work as scientists coming from a postdoc, we are used to do that with a very academic perspective, just focus on the technical details. When you go to a first interview in industry, they just want to know about you. What are your goals? Why do you want to work in this company, in this city or this country? And you can be taken off guard because you have been preparing for the interview, just focus on the technical things. And learning how to master the soft skill side of things is the trickiest part. A lot of that can be done through learning by doing. While you gain the industry experience, you can learn how to master the skills. But I think it's important for postdocs to train also these kind of soft skills like communication, managing relationships, these sort of things. These are very important.
Great insights, Andrea. People skills really is such a difference moving from academia into industry, how people skills are valued in a different way, right? I mean, I always say in academia, you can make a career on your own. Of course, you have collaborations, but at the end of the day, you're driving your project. When you move into industry, just as you nicely explained earlier, you have to meet deadlines together with a team. You have to work with other people. So it's all about people skills and being able to communicate ideas and persuading people. I think that's really a big difference. A lot of PhDs are often surprised. And just as you said, when they go to interviews, they have this, tell me about yourself. And then they go on 10 minutes about their academic achievements.
Yeah.
You're here because we want to know who you are. And I see it when we give sessions is one of these mind-opening things because they have never heard about it. They care about who I am. A lot of PhDs, they put a mask on. I'm going to an interview. It's business. I have to be someone else. No, you don't. Come as you are in a professional way, and be yourself. You also want to see, would you fit in that company? Would you fit in that team? It's not a one-sided. So you want to be accepted the way you are. You want to be accepted with the values you bring in. If there is a misalignment, maybe it's not a good match. Yeah. And that's good to know too. So rejection in this way is really just redirection. And it's nothing wrong with you. It's maybe just not for this particular role, for this particular company, for this particular department. So,
Absolutely. I can totally relate. This is something I see from many of the PhDs that I mentored. I always try to tell them, don't let rejections get under your skin. Don't take them personally. I mean, I've been through it a lot. I collected tons of rejections during my job search, and of course they hurt, but I've learned. I mean, I used to question my worth when I got rejection, but after 6 years in industry, I realized landing an industry job is not about proving your value. It's about fit. It's about fit. There is one specific line manager working in one specific company, which in that specific moment has one specific problem. So who can be the person who is able to solve that problem? It's just about fit. So if you want to approach your job search more strategically, take some time to reflect, identify problems you can solve, identify and position yourself as the obvious solution when people look for someone who can solve that kind of problems. So yeah, I understand it's tricky, and probably we have to go through a lot of rejections before realizing that. Great point, Alina.
And I think, to be honest, making the transition is hard. And I think this is just something one also needs to recognize. It comes with a lot of rejection. Yeah. But it's a learning process. And the more interviews you go through, the more you learn. Yeah. And you need to expose yourself to these situations to learn. I mean, we have never done that before. And it's interesting that we have these expectations that we just go there and we should ace it and rock it. I always say finding a job is a skill too. And no one ever teaches us. That's why I think the work you do is so valuable. And also that's why we do the work we do. Because finding a job is a skill in itself and no one really teaches us. So I'm glad that we have so many people helping other PhDs making that transition, because just as you said, a lot of us, they come to the conclusion after rejection of rejection, my skills are not wanted. And that's the wrong conclusion. And this can be avoided if you just know what matters to industry. You adjust your language. You come from a way of not just describing things, but actually, how can I solve the problem you have? Because that's really what they want. They pay me to solve a problem. And how can I be that person, right? So, and it's also about alignment of vision and mission. It's not just, I want any job. Why do you want to work in this particular field? Why is this something you're passionate about? So with this being said, Andrea, if someone, and I know this is work you do, and we will talk about this after this question, if someone wants to craft an effective application for an R&D position, what are some things one should consider?
I would start with things one shouldn't actually do, which were all the things that I did. So first, Do not rush and go through a cold and random application. Don't spray and pray, spray and pray. Doesn't work. It's a massive effort and is a massive waste of energy. Take some time to reflect. Make a self-assessment, proper self-assessment. Try to think about your values, the things that you enjoy doing and why you enjoy doing that. Ask yourself what you're good at and what you can improve. Ask other people you trust and who know you what you're good at and what you can improve. And then once you gain clarity about your values, your strength, and your career goals, then you go out and you gain awareness of the available roles in the industry of your interest. I can help with pharma R&D, but it doesn't have to be pharma. It might be whatever industry. Identify which are the roles available, and then come back to your self-assessment and see, okay, does some of this role align with my strengths and values and goals? Which ones? And then target one or maximum two of these roles and start focusing, selectively targeting these roles in your applications. Translate your skills from academic perspective to industry relevant expertise. Like we said earlier, do not put in your resume your publications and your academic achievements, but just highlight how you can help the company achieve its goals through what you've learned in the process of your postdoc or your PhD. And once you've done that, you're ready, start networking. Identify key people covering positions. I mean, you don't have to go on LinkedIn and reach out to the CEO. That doesn't make much sense. And you don't have to reach out to an executive. If networking is intimidated, many PhDs tell me, I'm an introvert. How can I do networking? Yeah, of course, if you want to reach out to a very prestigious professor or a CEO or an executive, that might be intimidating. You can just reach out to people just like you, people who is just 2, 3, 5 years ahead of you, and try to build a relationship and reach out to people. Don't do cold applications. They rarely work. They might work, but it's just like, spray and pray. Focus your search, target the roles, target the companies that are aligned with your values. It might be large pharma, small biotech, startups, B Corps, whatever. Identify these companies and the roles. Narrow down. It's the power of niching down. We know it because we're creating contents on LinkedIn, Alina. So it's the same thing. Niche down, narrow down your options. And even though it might feel like you're limiting your opportunity, it's actually the opposite.
If you try to target them all, you target none, because your application will become very generic, right? And I mean, it's the same as you said, we have a target audience. We tailor our content to the target audience, which is very niche. But if we talk to everyone, we would probably talk to no one, because no one would feel seen. No one would feel she's talking to me. And I think it's a similar way in an application, because if you apply for all sorts of different roles, people will see it's quite generic, because there is something different to it when you have thought it through, when you have reflected, why do I want to work in this role? Yeah. You have a story to tell. And I think this is what makes also the difference, because at the end of the day, a company hiring is very, very expensive. And they don't just want to hire someone who doesn't know what else to do in life. They want to hire someone who they have a reasonable belief in that this person will stay. So this brings me to one more last point that I want to emphasize. And actually, you inspired me, Andrea, to do a episode about networking, because what you said is really valuable. Reach out to people. But what I see a lot of PhDs struggle on how to. Don't go to Andrea and send your CV. Don't go to another person and send your CV. Is not networking. And this, I just want to say straight away, approach it from a place of curiosity. Come in as a human being, show interest in them, what they do, and try to learn about what they do. And this is actually good in two ways, because you get insider insights. You learn a little bit of the lingo by understanding what does this person do in the role, because listen how they talk, pick it up and implement it in your own application. And second, you also expand your network. Now you might have a new valuable contact. And third, just keep nourishing that network too. Sure. So show up if they create content, engage with it. But I will do an episode on this, because I think it's so important, because we always talk about it like it's so easy, but I see a lot of PhDs actually, they stumble at this point where they then don't know how do I practically approach networking. With this all being said, Andrea, I haven't mentioned it, but you're also a mentor to PhDs. This is something that you're building up. I think you have seen the need. You see people struggling and you want to fix this like many of us. So what is it that you do with your work and what are you creating and how can people reach you if they want your help?
So basically, I started being an industry mentor for PhD students and postdoc last year in a program originally from the Johns Hopkins University in Baltimore, US. It's called a Hopkins Biotech Network mentoring program. And basically PhDs from that university subscribe and they get one industry mentor who can follow them through different sessions. And I help them building their career strategy based on what we discussed earlier. How can you make a proper self-assessment, gain awareness on the roles, translate your skills, and most importantly, networking. And starting, I guess, 3 months ago, I started to post regularly on LinkedIn about academia to industry transition. And I generally post twice a week. So you can find me on LinkedIn. You can engage with my content. And definitely you can reach out via direct message. I do my best to reply to you all. I kindly ask you, thank you, Alina, for having done that, not to send the CV straight away for a CV review. That happens a lot, unfortunately. But you can find me on LinkedIn. You can reach out. I'm trying to expand this mentorship thing. Either it's through universities, through my own mentorship program, or through other platforms such as Alma Me. The job that you're doing together with Angela is absolutely amazing. It's helping PhDs a lot. So I'm open to all possibilities of mentoring. And stay tuned on LinkedIn, and soon you will find out more.
Thank you. Andrea, I really like your content and I can see it resonates. We talked about this a little bit earlier. It really resonates and people feel seen. So if you're a PhD, a postdoc, you want to move into R&D, pharma, biotech, or any sort of R&D, definitely give Andrea a follow on LinkedIn. And I will actually put his LinkedIn in the show notes so you can just go and connect with him. And with this actually, it's like, I could go on and on, but we have reached the end of the episode. It was hugely insightful. Thank you so much, Andrea. And thank you, everyone, for listening in. I'm sure this is valuable for you who are listening, and I hope you take something and you can directly implement it. Lots of actionable advice from Andrea. As I said, do connect with him, learn more about his mentoring program, but also the career transition. I think it's hugely valuable to hear how we all struggle with the transition, and it gives you this feeling of community and you're not alone. And I think that's sometimes all you need to understand you're not alone in this. We have all been there. We're here to support you. Please, if you enjoyed this episode, leave us a review. This helps us that other PhD can discover this podcast more easily and really use this and leverage it in their own job search. And thanks for listening, and I'll see you next week.